Welcome to the Gruber Companies. This is the Tesla Roadster podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
Got a number of things to cover with you today, and thanks for joining us. The image behind us is a blue Tesla Roadster 2008 is what I asked for. And I've got an echo, guys. Oh, no, it's these guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Pete, your volume is on your laptop. You need to turn it off. We can hear the echo.
Okay. Let's see here.
There we go.
All right. No more volume. So 2008 electric blue Tesla Roadster on a white snow-capped mountaintop with cumulus clouds and sunlight streaming through. And this one was probably one of the more accurate representations of a Tesla Roadster, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I was very impressed when I first saw this come through. It has the two big bugaboos that I always look for are the hood vanes. This one has the correct number, and the number of spokes on the wheel. I've seen 8, I've seen 10, I've seen 11. This one, I think, has the right number of spokes on a Roadster wheel, which is 7. And so it's still missing the roll top, but other than that, I think it's almost completely accurate.
A couple of things that I did have to modify using the new capabilities within Photoshop, which is generative fill. There was a doorknob on that driver's side, and I got rid of that, or a door handle.
Okay.
And a gas port door. And so both of those with generative fill, by the way, I don't know if you guys are using that yet, but it is a wonderful tool. You basically circle around what you want to remove, and you type in remove, and AI takes over, and it blends it in with the surroundings, correct surroundings.
The Firefly, I think was what it's called with Adobe, is a truly amazing AI piece of AI. I've tried to get it to do some of the things that Midjourney does, and it's been spectacularly bad. I mean, head and trunk of somebody's body sitting in the middle of a hood of a Roadster, and
wrong digits, 3 hands,
all kinds of really weird stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm so incredibly impressed with where things are going.
It's an exciting time. And one of the things in our AI podcast, for those of you that aren't aware, Sunday mornings, Jesse and I come in at 10 a.m. PST, and we do about an hour AI podcast looking at all of the recent developments. And what I'm excited about is the augmentation aspect of artificial intelligence, how it's going to make humans so much smarter, more powerful, more capable in so many different ways. But anyway, that's the reason for the image behind us. It is a Tesla Roadster representation by artificial intelligence. We have a image that I'd like to pop up here, guys. It is in the image folder, and it's the 1913 Detroit diesel car. And this was a really cool article. There's a Tesla Roadster sitting next to that, and it was at a car show in Germany. The owner of this 1913 Detroit diesel electric car is Jorn Grunkier, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it's got some characters that I don't even I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not totally familiar. I happen to watch the bicycle races, the Tour de France, sometimes the Euro d'Italy. And the España Vuelta.
Okay,
so that's
you're doing pretty good pronouncing those.
The Tour of France, the Tour of Spain, the Tour of Italy, and I get to hear all kinds of interesting European names, and I think the J is most of the time pronounced with a yes sound, like we have a Y here in the States.
So this would be Jorn, and it's an O with a diagonal line through it, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But
I'm not either.
But anyway, he owns this car, and he was at this show sitting next to a Roadster, and it was a great article about extolling the virtues of both cars, actually, the Tesla Roadster and this 1913 electric vehicle. And you can see the front of this definitely has some lead-acid batteries involved, but the history of electric vehicles is a long one, and it wasn't just the Tesla Roadster. There was a decline at the turn of the last century, and then it was revived with the EV1 and eventually the T0 and the Roadsters.
I read almost the entire article from Jorn, And uh, I was impressed on one thing that he mentioned especially. What would have happened, he said, if instead of killing the EV1,
Hmm.
if General Motors had come out with a lithium ion battery for the EV1?
Wow. This was a 1995 a time frame, I think.
It was the late 90s. In 1991, the lithium ion battery had come out in camcorders and stuff. So it was
Hmm.
out there. And the price of lithium ion as a battery material had already dropped from its initial research price to 97%.
Hmm.
And while the energy wasn't nearly what we have today, it was almost 3 times the energy of other technologies available. I also did not know that and learned that General Motors had put an electric nickel metal hydride battery into their EV1, and as opposed to just lead acid.
Right.
And that nickel metal hydride battery was giving the EV1 almost 150 miles of range.
Interesting. Yeah. So they
So,
began to see the light early on. And, actually, Martin Eberhard, of course, has been credited with encouraging AC propulsion systems to convert one of the T zeros from AGM lead acid batteries to lithium ion, what they call laptop batteries at the time, because he was used to using them in his rocket books business and found that the size and the energy density lent itself to storage like this. But the innovation was doing a multi-cell lithium ion pack to the order of currently the Roadster 6,831 of these little vape cigarette cells.
the one of the reasons for the battery pack, as opposed to how you have your sealed lead acid batteries, had to do with cooling.
Oh, okay.
Because of the thermal management risks. They knew that lithium had a tendency to get hot, and when it got too hot, it had a tendency to, spontaneously combust. And they knew they figured out by putting these batteries together in large sheets,
Mhm.
they could put coolant in with the sheets, the pouches and stuff that we see now. That's
Mhm.
so that was very purposeful. Again, this article here that we went through explained part of that. I thought it was fascinating. It was a fascinating read and great article.
On top of each of the T0, we owned a T0, by the way, one of three.
Hmm.
On top of each of the Optima spiral wound 12-volt batteries, and there were 28 of them, was a little magic black box that was pretty old tech, but it had some chips in it,
Hmm.
and it was a temperature sensor. And it was actually part of the battery safety management system for this T0. And I remember the seller advising me that these are one of that this is a highly custom proprietary product. I'm going to give you a couple extras, which we still have, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and but yeah, they did have some form of thermal management and battery safety management, even with the old lead acid batteries in that T0.
Yeah, and it's I'm not surprised because the T0, we know from critical power, when you ask for a lot of wattage from your battery, all of a sudden those batteries will get hot.
Right. Yep. One of the images that we can probably pop up, and if that's, since this is a Roadster podcast, it's the one that is probably making headlines right now. And we have some updates for you. If you can throw up a picture of the stolen Roadster, guys, and we'll get to the storyline here.
So the stolen Roadster is as a map. You want that, not the actual car? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
Okay.
the map. So the backstory here, and we discussed some of this in our meeting or in our podcast yesterday for the general EV, but we'll go over it again here for the Roadster podcast. So the backstory is a Florida Roadster owner had sent his VIN 541 Thunder Gray 2010 Roadster to the Florida Fort Lauderdale Service Center for a 3.0 battery upgrade almost a year ago or so. And it took a while. They're much faster now, by the way. We've seen turnaround times in the order of 2 to 3 months at this point.
Hmm.
But finally, they ended up getting his battery installed. What had happened in the meantime, though, is they contacted him, and he was out of the country. He was in Europe, and they discovered the car was no longer at the service center after the upgrade. And so the customer was notified, and they said, well, we're having the Broward County Sheriff's Department look into a possible theft of this vehicle. I mean, it's kind of hard to misplace a Tesla Roadster. You know, they're big, they're bright, they're colorful, they weigh 2,700 pounds or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So they ended up starting an investigation. And here's the rest of the story, eventually how it evolved. The customer, by the way, now is back in the States. The Roadster was apparently towed to an impound lot because of illegal parking at the request of the Broward County Sheriff's Department. Well, this obviously wasn't going to be at the Tesla location, the parking lot. I'm not sure, you know, if it had been parked in a handicap spot, for example, it would have been a parking ticket.
Right.
But they certainly would have towed it. They would not have towed it and, you know, impounded the car.
Yeah, I'm thinking it would have been either fire lane or, you know, like your airport white zone, although it was in a neighborhood, so there wasn't that, or maybe double parked and blocking traffic.
So as the details eventually emerged, there is a video of an individual getting into the Roadster at the Tesla Service Center and driving away with it. And the map there shows you the red pair is the service center, and where it was finally located was where it says Oakland Park, about a mile away from the service center. So at this point, the rest of the details have not yet emerged. Did they go on a joyride? If they did, they had a new 3.0 battery in the car, which with full charge is over 300 miles range,
Right.
with a partial charge about 230, 240 or so. And did they go on a joyride and then circle back to where they started? Or did they go on a joyride and give it up a mile from the service center? So we won't know that until details about what kind of charge is left on the car emerge.
Something I'm going to speculate on that I
Sure.
didn't even think about yesterday. Tesla seemed to have forgotten that they had put a new battery in this car.
Briefly, yes.
Is it possible that they put the battery in the car, left it off of a charge with a service plug plugged in, and had been sitting out there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, when the car was finally stolen? In which case, the battery, which would have started out with a full charge, would have in 4 weeks' time been down to 20% or so,
That's
or,
the
or
rest.
maybe less.
Yeah, that's the rest of the story that we're all waiting to hear. You know,
Yeah,
what were the details around this?
I can't wait to hear it. It's
Uh,
it could that is as likely as the person took a joyride and kind of got scared and decided to take it back.
Sure. And, you know, the action by the PD of immediately having the car towed and then impounded indicates that it was left in a place that it wasn't just illegally parked somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, blocking traffic or whatever. So in the meantime, this car should be back at the Tesla service center at this point. And the owner said that Tesla was very good about taking care of all of the charges and getting it back to the service center. We called the impound lot and got kind of the backstory, and that's where some of these details came out. That it was a mile from the service center, and that Tesla was coming to pick it up shortly, and that was a couple days ago.
Well, I can only imagine that somebody at Tesla has some serious egg on their face about a car that they let get away.
Yeah. I'm sure that those details will be interesting as they emerge. But, you know, again, to Tesla's credit, they did the right thing. They immediately jumped on it. They got the car back. They paid for everything. And
Yep.
I'm sure they're going to make it right with this customer. The customer did request, please check for any damage. And, of course, Tesla will take care of that as well.
And what's the customer you think going to be doing with this car when everything is all said and done?
Well, a post on Facebook indicates that the customer now is saying, and I quote, P.S., I'm getting too old to get in and out of the car, and it will soon be for sale.
Okay.
By the way, which is something that we're hearing quite often these days with the Tesla Roadsters. Currently, there is a glut in the market. And it is evident on our Roadster matchmaking site. We've got more entries than we've ever had before, and we have more that are in process currently. In fact, we'll bring that up here in a moment. We'll tell you some of the cars that are now currently for sale. And then bring a trailer. Same thing. It seems like one a week currently is being posted on Bring a Trailer. And Bring a Trailer with their 7-day, auction time is probably not going to generate any high value sales at this point or any high dollar sales. In fact, the last few have been somewhat disappointing, and I'll go through those with you. There was a 27,000 mile 2010 Roadster Arctic White, 2.5 for sale recently. And I warned this customer, I said, make sure you put a reserve on it. And he did. It got to $85,000, did not meet the reserve, and the owner now has his car back. There was a 2,800 mile 2008 Tesla Roadster, just posted yesterday, actually. And this is an electric blue. It's on Bring a Trailer.
Mm-hmm.
It has an R80 pack. And here's an important thing to ask when you hear 3.0 upgrade, R80 pack, replacement battery. Was it the 2016 version or the 2020 version? Because there is a difference. And I know we've talked about this, but we have a video out on YouTube that gives you the details of what the challenges and the risks are with buying a Roadster with a 2016 issue 3.0 upgrade battery pack, which will eventually result in loss of power and a premature replacement compared to the legacy packs, which, by the way, I'm test driving one right now, actually. It's got a legacy pack. And this morning when I left, one of the things that I do during test drive is I charge at 120 to get a baseline. What will it charge to each day, especially after a resistive cell repair?
Sure.
Because we want to make sure there are no others in there that are affecting, the car. This one it wasn't even done charging yet, and it was 183 miles in standard mode, which is the 80% charge. And this is a legacy pack.
That is absolutely stunning because, I recently, we have a customer that has some Roadsters with us, and he's going to be putting some of them up for sale eventually. One of the Roadsters he has the original purchase documentation. Mm-hmm. And that original purchase documentation includes what the estimated range is on a brand new Roadster. And this one was a 2010, 225 miles in full range charge. Mm-hmm. And in your day-to-day driving, which is the standard charge, and they say that it typically is 180 miles.
Interesting. Yeah, for a brand new battery.
And that's a brand new battery that they're talking about as their estimated range. So if you have a battery that's getting 180 to 185, that's as good as new.
Yeah. And then my other test car that I was driving the end of last week was getting anywhere from 177 to 179.
Wow.
In standard mode. So anyway, the 2016 replacement packs are certainly not living up to expectation, and it should justifiably affect the resale price. Mm-hmm. Now, in this particular case, this 2,800 mile Roadster, which, by the way, looks very much like the one behind us there. It's an electric blue, R80 2008. You should be able to add $30,000 to the sales price to come up with a market price for this car. If you have non-pedigreed Roadsters selling in the 75 to 85 on Bring a Trailer, then a car like this should be fetching anywhere from $100,000 to $110,000 because somebody just put a $30,000 battery pack in that car.
Right, and that price is going to be going up because the battery packs are no longer $30,000.
$40,000, exactly.
They're now $40,000 plus taxes and installation.
Right.
So they're between $40,000 and $45,000 out the door price now instead of that $30,000 out the door price that they used to have.
So for those of you that are watching this on Bring a Trailer, it should fetch over $100,000 based on its on what it has in it, and I hope they have a reserve on it. So it'll be interesting to see how this one fares. On our Roadster matchmaking site, we've got a number of new Roadsters for sale currently, mm-hmm. and there's some in process that will be posted within the next couple of weeks as well. Again, there's a glut of used Roadsters in the market right now. The reasons are beginning to have a common denominator, and as sad as it is, things like I can no longer get in and out of the car is not an uncommon reason for selling the car. Sometimes the widows are selling the cars. We have another one, health reasons, actually 3 of them within the last couple of months now. It's everything from I had knee surgery, can't do it anymore, do the Roadster Wiggle. Had back surgery, can't do the Roadster Wiggle anymore. And other types of health reasons as well. So I don't know where this is all going to end. I don't think that the Roadster community is all geriatric, but it's possible, I suppose, based on when these cars were originally released.
It's possible. I mean, you think about it. These cars were $100,000 to $120,000 cars in 2008, when the typical price of a car was anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 new.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that this would have appealed to a wealthier clientele, which kind of by definition means that it's going to be an older clientele, people that are in their middle to upper middle age.
Disposable
range.
incomes, not using it as a daily driver,
Right.
fulfilling their fantasy of getting a cool sports car.
Yep.
Yeah. So that may be the demographic that is now beginning to be affected, and one of the reasons that we've got these sales.
Yeah. And one of the things I've noticed with these Roadsters is that from what we've learned from the Chinese Roadsters, some of these are incredibly low miles.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, if your Roadster's a 2.0 or a 2.5, you really should deduct about 100 miles off the odometer, and that's how many miles the owner has driven. That first 100 miles was driven by Tesla.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
For the older 1.5s, the first 30 miles was driven by Tesla. If you end up with a Roadster for less than 100 miles, or right at 100 miles, you've got something that's basically never been driven.
Undriven, yes. Which actually leads me into my the next portion here, and we've been asked to prompt for questions. So, for those of you watching, tell us that you're out there. Tell us where you're coming in from. Comment, questions, give us tips for the next show. All of that is appreciated. So talking again about the glut of Tesla Roadsters right now, the 3 that we have listed currently on the Roadster matchmaking site, which have not yet gone to the pre-qualified buyer list. By the way Roadster matchmaking works, let me just give a quick description of that. It's completely free. Unlike auction houses, the seller pays, the buyer pays. The buyer pays a whole lot at times. Our Roadster matchmaking is a free service to the Roadster community, and it has some add-on benefits that go beyond just simply giving you a listing and a place to become visible. We get enormous amounts of traffic to our website. We also advertise to over 420 pre-qualified Roadster buyers that are looking for collector cars or just looking for Roadsters. And every time we get a new listing, we send that notification out to those 420 plus. Sometimes the cars sell before they even make it to social media and get promoted.
That's right.
Because one of the collectors said, I'm going to take that car off the market right now.
Yeah.
We also offer transport assistance. We subscribe to Central Dispatch. They have thousands of transporters all over the country. So if you need help with that, again, free of charge, we'll hook you up. You give us origin, destination, and we will send those quotes from those transporters to you directly. And then we even have a free escrow service.
That's right. When, because the Roadsters are oftentimes sold not within a single community, but across counties, across state lines, and there is the need for having a neutral third party, as it were, to help with the exchange of title and funds. We provide that escrow service for people. The buyer pays money into an escrow account for it that we set up. The seller then sends the title. Once the car is at the buyer's location and is inspected and is okay, we release the funds to the seller and the title to the buyer.
Right. All right. So there are some options besides the auctions is the point that we're making here. We've got YouTube. Brad T is joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome. Thanks for being there. And we've got YouTube EV fan. Arizona crew is in the house, he says. Okay.
Well, good morning and welcome both of you.
So we thought that the Chinese Roadsters were probably going to be the biggest news possibly ever in the Roadster community in
Yes.
terms of selling close to 0-mile vehicles, right? And we'll talk about those later, give you a complete update on those where we're currently at. But the first thing that you'll see if you go to the Roadster matchmaking site is a new listing Tesla Roadster. This is a 2010 Radiant Red Roadster from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And this one has the lowest mileage from any owned titled car that we have ever seen. 182 miles on that odometer. And in fact, let me read you the story on this one because it's a good one.
Yes.
Let's get there. So this car has only ever driven to and from the service center, and it must have been close because you need an annual PM, every year.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons that the mileage is so low. It was bought new in 2010, and it has been professionally serviced and stored since new. And yes, this is not a typo, 182 original miles on this odometer. The Roadster was purchased because Roadster ownership back then enabled a preferential share purchase during the IPO or the initial public offering. And from there it sat. It is, of course,
okay.
in pristine condition. I'll bet when you open this up, the car's not here, by the way. It's still in Oklahoma. Sometimes the cars are shipped here. It will probably have the new car odor, and it is truly a time capsule. It's the closest thing that we have to the low mileage Chinese Roadsters now, which is 104 miles, 109 miles, and 129 miles.
And the one advantage that this Roadster has over the Chinese Roadsters is that it went to service on a regular basis. So that means it's got a good battery pack. It's not going to have the PPF issues that we've seen with the Chinese Roadsters because they were sitting in storage and unmaintained for 13 years.
And one thing we didn't nail down, which we need to do, guys, is was this stored in a temperature-controlled environment? I believe it was because this was part of a collection, and so we do not expect any of the kind of temperature-related damage that we saw to the PPF on the Chinese Roadsters. In fact, if you go to the listing, you'll see that it was also kept underneath a Tesla Roadster car cover with the appropriate vents, and it was continuously left plugged in with the 120-volt charge cable, so the car always was able to charge itself and decide when it needed a charge.
So then the only question is whether that garage that it's in right there in that picture is an air-conditioned garage or not.
Exactly.
And if it was, then, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was, then this Roadster was in a climate-controlled environment as well.
And then look at the calculated amp hour capacity, 154.85. That's almost 155. And it charges up to 180 miles in standard mode, or
Okay.
And it has a visible carbon fiber hardtop as well, so it has some options.
What a beautiful car.
Yeah. Now, the asking price for this is $299,500. And I think for the right collector, this is probably not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I'm thinking that a Roadster as new and pristine as this, as rare as this one is, very good chance that it's going to be able to be sold for that amount. We had one that was sold a couple of years ago for $295,000, and it had 384 miles on it. So this is in that same price range.
Yeah. The next one that we have on the Roadster matchmaking site is the lightning green, and this is a popular color, and they only made 33 of them. This one is in British Columbia, up in Canada, and it sports 156.21 CAC. These are incredible, specs on these legacy battery packs. This is not a replacement. This is the original 53 kW pack. It is It charges, it says, to 146 miles. Now that seems low to me based on 156.21 CAC. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, we'll have to find out about that.
Yeah. It is a sport roadster. And oh, by the way, the red one, the Radiant Red. I don't remember if that was a sport. Let's see if that's the case. I need to go back to that.
One of the things that we need to check on when we find this out is whether the sport roadsters had a slightly different range because they have a different motor configuration, a more powerful motor in them. And is that more powerful motor causing the car's internal software to report lower charge levels, even though the battery has the same charge state?
I don't know that. But yeah, the first one was also a sport roadster. So we've got a couple of sport roadsters here that are for sale. This particular lightning green, by the way, in Canada, is the asking on that is 125,000. It's got 23,000 miles on the odometer. It's VIN 1296. It's in Langley, British Columbia. And then we also have another Canadian car that we had not yet promoted to the pre-qualified buyer list. And this is a 2010 Tesla Roadster in Chatham, Ontario, Canada. So on the east side of Canada. It's got 18,000 miles, Fusion Red, and VIN 902. Asking on that is 112, and that also has the legacy battery pack. Let's take a look at the specs on that and see what the CAC on that one is.
That one looks like the classic sports car, the black and the red and the upgrades. Looks like he has the upgraded carbon fiber hood and possibly an LED headlight upgrade based on that picture there. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous car.
This one has a CAC of 117.23, and it charges in range mode up to 146 miles. For those of you that need some perspective, I have Roadster VIN number 5. And it has the original legacy battery pack. It charges typically to 154 or 156, somewhere in that range. And I haven't done a CAC reading in some time. I don't remember what that was. So those are 3 to start with that are available currently on our Roadster matchmaking site, with 2 more that are in process of being listed. And then, of course, the Barn Find Roadsters, which we'll get to here in a moment. So if you're looking for a Roadster, you've got a lot to choose from. If you're looking for Roadster valuation, by the way, if you want to see some really low values, go to Bring a Trailer. If you want to see some higher values, go to our Roadster matchmaking site. Now, granted, our process takes a lot more time than 7 days.
Right.
Our listings are out there until they expire. And when the right customer comes along, sees the right combination, since we're a dating service, we turn them over to the seller, and they negotiate price, and they take care of all of that themselves. We're out of that loop. But it is a much more gentle sale. It also allows a lot more communication because a prospective buyer is talking directly to the seller, not through text, not through the auction sites, but they're able to get the backstory right from the seller. And we also provide tech support, and we do a lot of that with these sales. How do I charge it? What do I do after I get it? What are the service issues every year? And so there's a lot of value in our Roadster matchmaking site.
One of the things that I want to just, you've touched on a little bit, but I want to remind people again, just one more time. Bring a Trailer has a seller fee. Bring a Trailer has a buyer fee. The buyer fee is somewhere between 5 and 10%, and I think the seller fee is close to 5% as well.
Actually, it's about $100 to $200, I believe.
For the seller fee?
Yeah,
okay, so that's far less on the seller side. But that buyer fee is significant. That's part of what will depress the prices on Bring a Trailer. Because when you're coming to the Roadster matchmaking site, if you have a $110,000 Roadster, your buyer's going to pay $110,000.
Right.
Buyer's not going to pay $125,000 or $120,000.
Right. Good point. It looks like we've got someone chiming in there.
Yeah, Crunch to Grace Hopper is joining us on YouTube. Like number 3 from Newport Beach, SoCal. Caught up soon. And he gives us the reminder to smash that like, y'all, that thumb. Take any takes on Tesla's earnings call. Um, we'll have to get to that in just a little bit. Probably as part of tomorrow's podcast, we'll get more of the takes on Tesla's earnings call that was just held recently. And then he also continues and comments, wow, knee or back surgery. Do tell when and why and the effects of those kinds of things.
Well, we have an image that we can pop up here, Jesse. It's the Minneapolis Service Center. And one of the Facebook contacts out on one of the Facebook sites where they do a lot of Tesla Model S battery repair, good threads, good discussions, good problem solving, good tips, all of that. Paul Erickson ended up driving to the Minneapolis Tesla Service Center and got a very warm reception, even though he's a competitor. He's an independent contractor like we are.
Right.
And anyway, he said that they asked a lot of questions. He asked a lot of questions too, but because of confidentiality agreements, they're unable to answer a lot of those, especially related to how to repair, what kind of procedures they follow, those types of things.
Sure.
But he said they were certainly inquisitive, and it didn't stop them from asking me questions. They enjoyed the pictures that he brought. And the picture that we have up there is a Tesla of a picture of their service center. That supercharger is actually one of the early ones, apparently, and there's a little write-up there. And I didn't pull that down or do that picture, but it would be cool to have one of those in our service center, wouldn't it?
Oh, that would be incredible to have one of those in our service center.
I think the closest we got was one of the local Tesla club people does large posters, and he actually did a poster of one of these, but it wasn't 3D like this one would have been.
Right.
So he was very pleased with the reception he got, and what I commented on was that Tesla is really unique in the business space regarding their posture and position toward competition. That's not the way it is in most other industries, and we've been in the critical power industry now for 4 decades. This is a space within where the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, regard competition as adversaries and the enemy, and this permeates their culture and extends to even uncooperative parts sales functions. Legally, they have to provide parts, whether you're a competitor, whether you're a customer, whether you're an owner, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But they make it very difficult, and there's what I would call dirty tricks involved at times, which I won't get into, but it's just poor form. So, but Gruber Motors now, working alongside Tesla, solving customer problems, it's been a refreshing change in that Tesla shows us what a far-sighted leading tech company can do once they put aside blinders, egos, and focus on taking care of what really matters, and I put this in capitals, the customer, regardless from what source, and working together in a spirit of cooperation.
Well, and cooperation isn't automatic in business.
No.
There is a tendency toward mistrust. It took time for us to build a relationship with Tesla. It's taken time for us to build relationships in the EV repair space.
Right.
And in fact, not all of our relationships have been successful.
True.
But I know that we at Gruber, we sincerely believe that this market, this EV market especially, is big, that it's bigger than any one of us that are in the space can handle because it's so new and it's so underserved.
Right.
There's plenty of space for everyone to grow at this point.
A common denominator that I see with companies that are small that can't seem to grow is this myopic view on competition, that they're adversarial, you can't work with them, you don't want to support them. Well, the difficulty with that mentality is you often shortchange yourself.
Right.
One of the reasons that our communications group exists is because a competitor years ago wouldn't sell us product, and it forced us to develop a manufacturing capability, which is not one of our 4 divisions.
Yep.
The small-minded concept that you can't work with competitors is completely absurd because no competitive overlap is ever 100%. And what smart business people do, they find these synergies available and turn a competitor into a customer and into a vendor. And now everybody wins.
Right, exactly.
So, but anyway, that was a interesting take on how Tesla operates. And as I pointed out, they do, however, have a legal department doing their job, limiting how much information they can share.
Yeah, and so they do their job. I agree there. We have a couple more questions.
Okay.
It's I'm gonna circle back to Crunch's question when he was asking about the knee and back surgery. I think that goes back to your comment where a lot of Roadster owners have talked about having knee surgeries or back surgeries or not being able to do the Roadster wiggle. Crunch, just remember the Roadster is a sports car. It sits about 4 inches off the ground, and the seat sits about 4.5 inches off the ground. So to get into a Roadster, you have to be able to bend way down. For somebody who is 20, 30, even 50, it's not that big of a deal. For somebody who bought a Roadster at say 53 or 54 years old, now they're 67 or 68 years old. Maybe they've had a knee replacement. Maybe they've had this back surgery. They simply can't physically do the bending and shifting and moving that they used to do. That's kind of what we were trying to talk about.
And then you get into, aging issues related to joints and manipulation and arthritis and,
yes, absolutely.
So there are some Roadsters that are being sold now for those reasons, and it's sad, but hopefully they go to a new group of people that are able to continue to drive them and enjoy them.
We're certainly hoping for a new generation of people to have them. On Instagram, Veer _BM016 says, "Hey, hi Gruber Motor Company, AI and Nikola and Tesla technology, hot."
TikTok, CMAC says, "Are you doing any service for other cars? 3SX. I'm disgusted with Tesla service." Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Our findings are that Tesla or any of these EV manufacturers can get overwhelmed with the amount of service needs that are coming their way at times. And in this market, it's difficult to find good people. We run through that all the time. We keep the cream of the crop here, but our recruiting needs have probably multiplied exponentially over the last couple of years to try to continue our growth, because it's so difficult to find good people these days.
Yeah. In fact, while Tesla Roadsters do comprise a majority of our service, they are not exclusive.
Right.
We are unique in the marketplace in how we do the Roadster work, and so they tend to get our priority service work. But we do have space for Model S's to come through, and I have seen us working on Model 3 and Model X items that are not covered by warranty anymore. The powertrain on the 3 especially, we just haven't seen any of those yet because the Model 3 powertrains have been under warranty.
They're largely still under warranty.
Yeah,
yes.
and they largely are. The first Model 3s came out 5 years ago, so it's going to be next year when we start to see Model 3s come through.
Sure. And that's going to be a consideration for any of you that have the later platform Teslas. We are not the source of warranty. In other words, if we take your car, it's not going to be free service like the service centers.
Correct.
No one reimburses us for doing work on the cars. However, the instant they're out of warranty, then we shine, because we have better turnaround times. We don't have as much influx of business as the Tesla service centers do. And although we give preferential treatment to Roadsters, we never turn away a Roadster, by the way. We're beginning to clear the backlog of Model S's now. And somebody pointed out that we've got 100 of them in backlog. That seems a bit severe, but...
I think that's a true number, though. At one point, we were out close to 150 in backlog.
Amazing.
And we have started to work through that backlog. And this is typically the major repairs, the people who are coming and saying, my car is having trouble driving, it'll power down spontaneously. We think that's a drivetrain issue, possibly fluid ingress into that electric motor, or people are getting the infamous BMS
Mhm.
029 error or the BMS
Eighteen,
U018.
19. Yeah, there are a bunch of them.
Those are all indicative of the same thing that goes on in the Model S that we fix with Roadsters, which is a resistive cell. So some of we are doing some service with models, the 3, the X, and the S, just that we're still in growth mode.
It looks like Nils is joining us from Denmark, and he says, I have a Ford Model A. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Wow,
Nils.
that's very cool.
And he says he sees falling prices there too because of the reasons mentioned. One difference, of course, is that there are around 500,000 A's still running. I didn't know there were that many, 500,000 still in operation.
I'm not surprised, actually. 3 or 4 years ago, my father is who passed away a couple of years ago was wanting to get a Model A, so he went and started looking among the area, and this is South Central Alaska we're talking about. He not only found Model A's, he had his choice of like 3 different Model A's that he could purchase. And so there were a couple in Anchorage, there was one in Fairbanks, there was one just about 20 miles from where they lived.
Amazing. In Alaska, of all
And
places.
this is in Alaska, of all places, yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm thinking of a place that is overall as sparsely populated as Alaska. They've got about 750,000 people. To have that number of Model A's actively out for sale, there's got to be a big market that I don't know anything about.
Interesting. Guys, if we can throw up another picture, it's in a folder called Eric's Carbon Fiber, and we're going to give a shout out again to Eric Robertson in Houston, Texas, who makes carbon fiber parts for the Tesla Roadster. And this is from a post on Facebook. He says, new headlight access panels in carbon fiber. There we go. If your car is missing the original panels, your front tires can sling water, rocks, and road debris against the underside of your very expensive headlight assemblies. These aren't going on my car, he said, but he has an owner that was missing a set. It took him about 5 days from beginning mold creation to test fitting the finished parts on his car. And he says, unlike other fabrication shops, I do not charge to create the molds for Roadster parts. If someone has a need for a part, I figured that others will eventually will need it as well. So I'm happy to create the mold and put it on a shelf for future future use. And he says it's also just fun to do. So it sounds like a true Tesla Roadster community member. A lot of these guys volunteer a lot of their time.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Henry Sharp developing the CAN Junior and CAN Seniors, for example. Tom Saxton working on the early log file parser. There's a lot of volunteer effort there. And thank you, Eric, for coming up with that product. It is available, apparently. And for those of you missing that, it looks like he's got a pretty decent version there.
And I like both the work that Eric does and what he says in his posts, especially about how, hey, I'll just make it. I'm sure I'll eventually have other people that need this part, so I'll make. Okay, to me, he's just passionate about what he does. He just wants to make cool carbon fiber stuff. I'm putting words in his mouth to say this, but
Right.
It would be almost like this is a hobby that he happens to get paid for.
Right. Now, I wanted to show the audience that something else that he makes. This is the lower carbon fiber fan shroud that goes on a Tesla Roadster. And there are usually 2 of these. These are originally made out of black ABS plastic. And in our service activity, 80% of the ones that come in are either crumbling, cracked, or disintegrating. Carbon fiber, of course, is going to be much more durable and last a lot longer. And this is made for us by a vendor that makes a lot of our carbon fiber. But I do know that that this is also made by Eric, and so he's got a wider range of product. In one of our earlier podcasts, and maybe it was last week, he also has a visible carbon fiber hardtop. And that's a pretty hard part to make. The first one apparently was getting sent to San Diego. He was showing his specialized crate. And by the way, we strongly recommend crates, shipping crates for anything like that, because shippers will damage it. And it's a challenge for them sometimes to try to damage it.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever watch Ace Ventura, where he's throwing that UPS box down the hall and you can hear the glass inside clinging and clanging? I think that's true, or at least that's my vision of what happens, because sometimes the stuff that comes back here, the shipping damage, is completely destroyed. A semi ran over it and flattened it,
Ed, just a quick story. Back when my wife were very first married, very poor, we decided that the best way to ship or to move from Texas to Idaho, is where we were going to move at the time, was to contract with UPS and send stuff through UPS.
Right.
So we ended up sending 9 boxes of our stuff to UPS. And then we traveled up to Idaho, had a little U-Haul trailer and a car and so on and so forth. Got up to Idaho and found that we had suddenly 10 boxes from UPS. And 4 of the boxes of the 10 were smaller than the boxes that we originally gave UPS.
Really?
And a bunch of our stuff was missing, and it was terrible.
It's almost like the airports. But anyway, this is a part, yes, that also Eric makes. Our parts guy, our GMC parts guy, Ramiro, bless his heart. I went over there this morning. I said, Ramiro, I want one of these as a demo. So he brings me this part, and it's wrapped in flannel, and he's got plastic around it, and it's absolute perfection. It just looked, and so I told him, I said, no, don't take that apart. I can do without it. I'll just describe it. So he took it apart anyway. But yeah, we take great care with our parts and have some great people there. So Eric, yes, if you come up with anything else, let us know. We'll certainly promote it on this Roadster podcast.
Oh, by all means. In fact, YouTube Art Man has joined us and is saying, that's wild. My dad has one of them. And I think he's talking about these headlight shrouds, because the comment came up while we were talking about that.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Looks like Mike Aldea joined us. He says, sorry I'm late. Well, that's okay. Anytime works, Michael. Feel free to chime in. One other thing about Eric Robertson, who is obviously a carbon fiber expert. He was weighing in on the damaged PPF on the Chinese Roadsters. And if you've been to our Roadster matchmaking site, or the Roadsters for Sale, you can see that the carbon fiber is cracked, clouded, peeling, and it's the worst that we've ever seen on any cars, which had us puzzled because they weren't out in the sun. They were certainly not in temperature-controlled environments. They were in the dark the entire time, so there was no UV exposure.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out, how did they get this bad? Well, here's Eric's take, and I think he's onto something here. He says, wow, those poor carbon fiber parts. I'd say it looks that way from over a decade of regular heat cycling. He says temps in the sea containers could get over 140 degrees Fahrenheit during the day before cooling off at night. The carbon fiber and its resin matrix have different thermal expansion properties. He says carbon fiber actually shrinks when heated, and you corroborated that.
Oh, yes.
Whereas he says epoxy, polyester, or whatever matrix material was used expands. This is why when you leave these parts outside during a hot day, or even go too hard with a rotary polisher, the clear finish starts to ripple. Do this hundreds of times, and the finish eventually flakes off, as seen on these cars.
Well, and his point about the temperature variations, I think that could do a lot to damage PPF. If you're, we don't know exactly where this port is at, but we do know that it's on the eastern coast.
Guangdong. Yeah, it's the eastern coast.
Yeah, eastern coast of China. And that means that weather patterns would not have moderated the temperatures as much as like what we have in the Pacific West coast. If you think about it, go to New England. They have cold winters. They have hot summers. They have all kinds of snow, all kinds of weather. Go same latitude across to the
Pacific Ocean.
Yeah. And the Pacific Ocean has moderated the weather. And so Portland, which is Portland, Oregon, which is not too far south of where Boston and Washington D.C. are, doesn't have any snow to speak of.
Mhm.
It has much milder temperatures because the weather comes across the ocean instead of across the land.
Same latitude, basically.
And it's the same latitude, basically. So these Chinese roadsters, the weather patterns are going to come across land, not ocean. And so you're going to have more temperature extremes, which is going to be harder on the parts.
Sure.
But for the carbon fiber, I have heard this before. One of the things that makes carbon fiber so desirable as a building material is exactly what Eric's referring to. Carbon fiber shrinks when it gets hot. And most materials that you can think of that are made in construction, even woods, but especially metals, expand. Even concrete is known to expand as it gets hotter. Carbon fiber doesn't, it shrinks. And so engineers are able to take carbon fiber and the epoxies, the resins that make the carbon fiber hard, and they're able to balance the two so that you have a product that is temperature stable, that it doesn't shrink or expand no matter what temperature it is. And in precise environments where that precision is needed, where they need to account for expansion or the lack thereof, something that stays the same size no matter what temperature is a huge advantage.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're onto something there, Eric. Would love to hear you or from you if you have any more opinions about that. By the way, just on a side note here, this was really funny. The other day, one of our mechanics says, my neighbor, I started to talk to him because he saw my Tesla Roadster. He was test driving a Roadster or taking it to a car show. That's what it was, one of ours. And he said, I work for Tesla. He says, you're kidding. You work at the service center? He says, yeah. So they had a good chat and they compared notes. And, we do the same type of work, basically.
Sure.
And what the Tesla rep told him, or the Tesla mechanic, he says, hey, we watch your podcast, and that Pete's quite a guy. He says this, and then, and it's fascinating and all that. And it turns out that at least here locally, both of the service centers, or at least two of them, watch our podcasts. So I feel more inclined now to do things like sharing tech tips and talking about some of our procedures, which might help them as well.
Sure. So that means shout out to the Tesla service centers that are watching us. We've heard now of 3 or 4 that watch us on a regular basis.
And actually Lathrop, the Reman Center up in California, they watch our videos because a vendor said, after watching your video, they said, we want that same tool that Gruber is using. Do you have one that we can purchase and try out and all that?
Yeah.
So we're getting some press.
That's pretty cool. Very cool. Neil says, with us on YouTube, referring to the Model A, he says, yes, in Denmark alone, there are over 1,500 registered Model A's, plus probably another 1,000 or so unregistered. It's mostly the Tudors because they're all iron. The 4-doors are often rotted away.
Oh, really? Okay.
Interesting. And Highlander has joined us as well.
Hi, gang. Yeah.
Says, hi, gang, and kindness is always free.
Looks like Miles has a comment as well. He says, thanks for that carbon fiber info. So then how do Boeing and Airbus formulate theirs? Planes go up and down, get heated and cooled in record time.
That's one of the applications that the mix of carbon fiber and resins has been particularly good for, Niels, that the carbon fiber doesn't expand or contract.
So Chinese Roadster updates.
Yes.
Everybody asks about that, all right? Let's get to that. And I just realized I'm in the wrong section here, but bear with me. So we have 3 complete Chinese Roadsters. I just put up 4 fingers, by the way. I'm doing the AI thing, wrong digits. 3 Chinese Roadsters, there we go. And a 4th, 2 crates that have been opened up that indicate there was a 4th Tesla Roadster involved in this purchase in China. What we're unable to find is the frame, the PEM, the pack, and the drive motor. But most everything else is there, from doors to fenders to the hood to the trunk lid to the interior pieces, the trim pieces, but none of the electronic modules. The VMS module, the switch pack module, the HVAC module. There are a whole
Okay.
bunch of them. Although the transceivers for the TPMS, we did find two of those.
Okay. So they were taking, because the transceivers for the TPMS modules, uh, I think there are just two in a Roadster,
Mhm.
but that's going to be one of the most common electronic modules that will be on the Roadster.
Easily replicated, and most likely it was not proprietary to Tesla. I
Right.
think what they were focused on was, and we're assuming that this fourth Roadster was midstream autopsy, in that these parts were taken to wherever in China to start the reverse engineering process, with an intention then of going into the other three and replicating that autopsy process.
Sure, that makes total sense, and and that would it would be what they would want to look at. They're going to
Yeah.
want to look at the proprietary stuff there first. They're going to want to look at, how did Tesla design these chips?
Mhm.
Who did they get these chips from? So we can then go back to those vendors, and they'll probably would have been able to get that information.
Sure, they would get the BOM information, and then possibly even the board the vendors used to create the boards,
Right.
which in some cases was labeled. So you might ask, well, why pick on a obsolete Tesla Roadster? Well, remember, in 2010, this was the EV. There were no other EVs that had advanced EV technology. And that would have been a logical choice for anybody that is attempting to reverse engineer to get into the EV space.
Right.
So the mileage on these Roadsters, VIN 1107, it's a radiant red, 109 miles. VIN 1120, very orange, 104 miles. VIN 1146, very orange, 129 miles. And then 1185, we don't have the ESS pack, so we can't get mileage off of that. But that was also radiant red. So it looks like there were two radiant reds and two very oranges sold to them. You may ask, well, why was there so much mileage on these cars? Well, according to some of the Tesla experts, one of them I think is joining us, the original Roadster drive period was 30 miles, and then it would go into ownership.
Mm-hmm.
But because they had some additional quality control concerns, they changed the 30-mile requirement for test driving to 100 miles and expanded it. So that's why we've got these 109 and 104. The 129 most likely indicates there was a problem and they needed some additional test driving.
Yes, in all likelihood.
That was the burn-in, right?
That was the burn-in period. Now, according to our log file engineer, Nick, he found some interesting statistics there as well. He was able to extrapolate from log files exactly when these cars went dead. In other words, the batteries quit. VIN number 1146, which was the higher mile Roadster 129, went dead May 20th of 2011. And it is completely missing any ESS categories for the log files, which you would expect with a dead pack.
Mm-hmm.
VIN 1120, the last log file reading there, or the log file entry, was December 11th, 2011. And it also shows missing voltages on all of the battery management boards. And VIN 117 was, that's a 108-mile Roadster. It is also missing all of the log file, the voltage data, but that one went dead June 3rd of 2011. He says it's very cool to see these logs, though, and just how little entries there are compared to current Roadsters. Current Roadsters are constantly data logging. It's collecting information, and it's being stored. He said with these Roadsters, they only have about 70,000 entries, whereas with a normal driven Roadster, it's in the neighborhood of 250,000 to 300,000 log file records.
And a couple things on that. The 250 to 300,000 is pretty close to the maximum size I believe these logs ever get to.
Mm-hmm.
When a Roadster is driven, there's continual information being fed to the log. Drive times of every 10 minutes, of every 1 minute, and of every 1 second. We actually utilized the 1 second log file entries when we were doing our analysis on the 2016 battery packs. So a Roadster that's been driven 20,000 miles, you could do the math and say, wow, you should have had millions of entries in that log file.
Hmm.
Um, it would seem that, but the log files will overwrite
They'll overwrite
themselves.
themselves. Okay.
They'll overwrite themselves once they get to that 250 to 300,000 lines. So maybe they have 210,000 1 second entries, and they just start overwriting the 1 second.
Gotcha. He says one other interesting thing that he saw for VIN 1107, that was the Radiant Red with 104 miles on it. He said the very first day it was driven was December 1st, 2010, for the test drive with Tesla. So it's interesting what you can gather from the log files. Now, the final dispositioning of these Roadsters is we're going to create a menu of quotes that are linked to each car for the repair items, like wiring harness repairs because there was some rodent damage in a couple of the Roadsters.
Mm-hmm.
Plumbing repairs, same thing. The rodents preferred some of the rubber hoses that are going to the pump, for example, or the pumps in this case. And due to the collectability angle, we feel that buyers may want a choice of as-is, original, or with all the deferred maintenance resolved, except for a battery replacement, of course.
Right.
On the last Roadster removed, VIN 1146, the very orange, there was some nose cone dimpling. We decided to pressure wash the PPF and found that it removes the old PPF top layer. What we're left with now is a semi-sticky adhesive. And what we're doing now is dialing in the right chemical to attempt to remove that as well, which may then just simply remove the entire damaged or a declined PPF on these cars.
That would be incredible if that occurs, because usually PPF that is in as poor a condition as what's on these Roadsters is bonded with the paint, and removing the PPF involves removing the clear coat of the paint as well.
Right. So now that the Roadsters have been analyzed and certified and the odometer readings confirmed, the sellers are now ready to go round 2 with the bidding, and they're willing to split them up if it's necessary. So what we've done is we've begun to create separate listings for all 3 of them. There are only 2 out there so far. We're still waiting to get VIN 1146, get the pictures taken, and get that out there as a third Roadster option for bid. The 3 separate listings will appear on the matchmaking site, and lots of pictures, before and after pictures. There we go. Jesse has brought one up. And it looks like we've got the very orange.
I got a question for you on these ones. This one we're looking at here, this Barn Find 2010, this is 1120.
Mm-hmm.
So is it correct for, say, 2010s when this happened, when they were doing the 100-mile burn-in at that point, to assume that basically means it has 4 miles on it of actual use of some kind, right? Because there's the burn-in, and then there's 4 additional miles that they would have driven it just for whatever reason, transporting it or something like that?
Well, we weren't there, first of all, but we were told that Tesla at some point switched to 100 miles test drive. It's unclear to us whether there was any driving taking place once they were unloaded from the ships, where they then relocated into sea containers. But that 100-mile mark, there's either 4 miles, 9 miles, or 29 miles delta there. These cars were never titled. They never went into ownership. They never were put on the road, basically.
So they weren't actually
stored.
driven around, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because I was just saying that because that one above it, you see the Oklahoma one there above it at 182. That's also a 2010. So theoretically, that could have had the 100-mile burn-in as well at that point, which means it's an 82-mile car, essentially, of driving, which is crazy.
Excellent point.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah.
Excellent point. And that 100 miles, that might not be precise. The one that's 129 miles probably had something that got found, and they had
some issues. Yeah.
And they had extra test driving in order to resolve those issues.
Actually, Jesse's comment makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, you need to do an annual preventive maintenance every year.
Right.
So let's say they're 10 miles from the service center. Well, that would be 120 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, round trip would be more than that, wouldn't it?
It would be 20 miles round trip.
Yeah.
So if the person with this red Roadster with 182 miles lives, say, 3 miles from a service center. Okay, 6 miles times 12 years is going to be 72 miles.
The other side of that coin, though, is that the prevailing or conventional wisdom is that you need a annual preventive maintenance on your Roadster because you're driving it, you're sucking leaves and debris into the PEM heat sinks, you know. And in this case, if the car had been sitting there in a temperature-controlled environment without being driven, the necessity for annuals may not have been at the same schedule as a car that's been sitting like this.
Very true. So it could be that they were 10 miles away, and they over the 12 years they've done 4 trips to the service center, and that would be 80 miles, and then you have 2 miles that's not accounted for.
But if that 2010 time period is consistent with their switch over to 100-mile test drive, then it would be safe to assume that this has 100 original miles on it or so, and then the rest would be owner-driven miles.
Yep.
Cool. So the fourth Roadster now, VIN 1185, by the way, which is now just parts. It has also been identified as being part of this purchase. The body parts that we got with this was 2 complete doors, radiant red, brand new. You can tell the hardware has never been mounted. These are now. There's an interesting concept. If the doors were never mounted, then the car may not have been autopsied. We'll have to take a closer look at that.
Take a look at that.
Right. You got my curiosity now. There's a front bumper. There's a rear bumper. There are 2 sport seats, tan. There's a rear trunk deck lid, a trunk tub, a soft top, 4 wheels and tires. Of course, the tires are date-coded 2010, as you would expect. And again, no electronics, modules, PEM drive motor, ESS pack, chassis, no suspension components either, which we found out. You would expect some control arms, the shocks perhaps.
Yeah.
But maybe that stayed with the chassis. But if it stayed with the chassis, then why were the tires removed? All these questions are just, part of the intrigue here, I think. So that is the current update on the Chinese Roadsters. Again, the owners will start the bidding process again, and we will announce that as soon as that's taken place. At this point, we're doing the final stages of cleanup, identification, certification, and some remediation, like with this PPF on the worst car at this point.
Mm-hmm. So Niels on YouTube says, here. I look forward to more technical podcasts with unique content and insightful guests in the same direction if possible. Niels, we agree. We do try to get guests on a regular basis as well for the podcasts.
So he was saying that we don't have a sunglass commercial. Well, the reason for that, guys, is I just realized the 2 people that do this for us in the social media team are sick today. Normally there are 4 people sitting over there. Richard's here, Cass is here. And I don't think Aaron knows how to do a sunglass case commercial.
Well, I don't have a camera to even show you.
We're not doing cameras back here.
However,
yeah,
we do have our sunglass cases for sale for $79.99 on our website.
I guess Mark's going to do it.
There we go. You keep
There
going,
you go.
Aaron.
And the link will also
model.
be in the above the timestamps under this show. But just to let you know, fun fact, before I had the sunglass cases, I was only 4'5", and since I got them, I grew a whole entire foot.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
That's a good side effect.
Yeah. We're gonna. One more quick picture I want to throw up here, guys. MB Roadster. And the reason that I'm throwing this image up there, this is a Mercedes-Benz Roadster 1956. And I just want to make sure that people understand that the Tesla Roadster is not the first Roadster on the planet.
Yeah, the golden age of Roadsters actually occurred, I would say, probably between the 1950s and 1960s. Roadsters were a class of car more than they were a brand of car, and they were incredibly popular during that time period. The idea of getting out and putting on your driving gloves and just going and driving out on the road and having these typically smaller 2-seat cars is what they evolved into, where you could go and just drive and have fun. that's what the Roadster community was back in the day, and there were several brands and models of those. The Roadsters largely disappeared from the late 60s, early 70s timeframe up until almost 1990. And then the Mazda came out with the Miata. And that was a Roadster style car, a two-seater convertible, not necessarily really powerful, but it was supposed to be a fun car. And boy, the Miata, the Miata's still around there. It certainly hit that. And I love seeing that that when Tesla came out with it, they didn't just get a generic sports car. They went back to the roots of what fun driving was supposed to be about.
Very much so. And that, of course, had a lot to do with Lotus as well. Tesla's choice for the Elise, or the Lotus Elise, was the size and the ability to electrify.
Right.
But what I picture when you were saying that is a lot of celebrities owned Roadsters as well, the traditional old Roadsters.
Oh, yes.
And they would take them out on the coast highway with the wind blowing in their hair, and those are special cars for sure. But
if I remember right, the crash that James Dean got into that killed him when he was so young was in a Roadster style car.
It was a Porsche, yes, a Porsche Roadster.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we thank you for joining us. We always have fun with these podcasts, and we appreciate you providing inputs and tips as well. Throughout the week, we're starting to get tips from our audience and our viewers, things that they'd like to see more of. In this case, TikTok William17U says sunglasses ? With an emoji. But anyway, feel free to continue to join us. This is Wednesday. Tomorrow we will have the EV podcast. And then Friday it'll be Critical Power, and a different team comes in. And then Sunday, Jesse and I are going to do AI. And next week we may mix it up a little bit and change some things. So we'll let you know way ahead of time.
Absolutely. And, we've got the new Products podcast started.
Forgot about
started
that.
Up this
Monday.
We've had two of them now, and the Products podcast is going to be continuing on Monday. Yeah.
And I don't think I told you this, but we reached 100 subscribers this morning. It was sitting right at 99. I thought,
that's
come on,
fantastic.
Get another. And by the time I got to work, we got up to 100 subscribers. Those of you that want to make our staff here real happy, go to our YouTube channels: Gruber Communications, Gruber Power Services, Gruber Motor Company, and subscribe. Hit that like button, hit the notification bell, and then you'll be notified when we do these cool podcasts.
Well, I know that Gruber Power Services is trying to get to 1,000 subscribers, and it would be wonderful if you could help them with that subscription.
By the end of the month, by the way. That's the deadline, yes. One final one, Nils is chiming in. He says, a quite popular Ford Model A was the Roadster.
Yes.
Okay.
Did you get that one up above from him? He's got to get his shots at AI in before the end of the show.
Oh, yes, we need to do that. Niels has an AI comment. He says, cumulus clouds on top of one another in the background. That's impossible. But AI doesn't know.
Yeah.
He said, neural nets will frequently fail, just less and less often over time.
Nils, your comments are always so insightful. Very much appreciated. Well, all of you, thanks for joining us. We'll see you when the next podcast comes around.
Take care.